All right, welcome. Today we're going to be talking all about adoption. Well, we talk about adoption a lot, but we're going to focus on adoption today and questions that people have about it. And so I'm excited to go over those questions, give some resource to it. All right. So before we get into it, I got some reflection questions for you. And after I'm done these questions, please feel free to add in comments about additional questions you have and information that you may be able to provide or your personal testimony experience to help add and buff up the conversation. We think of like knowledge is like a puzzle. We all bring our little tiny pieces and we put it together. And the more and more conversations and perspectives we get, the better of a picture that we create and the more accurate it is. So accuracy and knowledge and true knowledge comes about through collective voices. I'm going to stop here because my teacher brain is kicking in. All right. Questions for you to reflect on. Question number 1, what does family mean to you? Or how do you define family? Let's go to question number 2. Have you ever considered adoption? If you have, what has made you open to it? If you've never considered it, what has made you hesitant about it? Last but not least, question number 3. What questions do you have about adoption or the process? What do you want to learn more about in regards to adoption? So take time, reflect on that with your family, friends, even on your own, and let's get started. Every story is important, and every story needs to be heard by someone, whether an audience of 1 or 1 million. Our stories are valuable because we have no idea the ripple effect it can have on generations to come. So join me in listening to stories of how unlikely people became unexpectedly connected. Their stories reveal that we were never meant to face life alone. And in helping one another, we end up finding ourselves and our purpose. Welcome to Letters from the Chosen. Before we go into the questions that people may have about adoption, I want to give you some facts about adoption. So, did you know that 135,000 adoptions occur a year? Now, that broken down is 59% being from foster, 26% international, and 15% being private domestic infant adoption. So the largest area, at least for us here in the United States, where adoption occurs is from foster care. Today in our conversation, we're going to be looking at children being adopted from foster care, since that is most commonly what happens within the United States. Now, my adoption was an international adoption. That made up a percentage of 26%. It's not as frequent. It does happen. All right. Second fact. Did you know that there are 114,000 children eligible and waiting for adoption? These are children that are ready to get connected with a new family. Wow. Isn't that such a big number? So there is so many. And the thought even now, it makes you almost sad, like, oh, they may not get adopted, and so those in waiting, coming from a international country, we didn't have these systems set up, at least not in the area I was growing up. So staying with people was with family and never in a structure that's been set up like foster care. And so it's a different experience because you're always connected to family friends who are probably family also, that you go through a little bit of a different experience. Okay, let's go to number 3. Adoption is low costing option for people to do. And not is it just low cost, it can also be almost free. And that is because the government covers the legal fees. All right. So we're going to get into about 10 sets of frequent questions that people have about adoption. But moving forward, I want to focus on just a topic about adoption so that we can get more into it. And I hope that it is helpful. All right. So, question number 1 that people ask about adoption. Do I have to adopt if I foster? So if I foster, do I have to adopt my foster child? The simple answer is no, you do not have to adopt the foster child you have. Going into foster care does not mean that you have to also adopt the children that come in. If that happens, beautiful. But if it doesn't, that's okay. There isn't an obligation that comes with it. Let's remember that foster care is a temporary care that we have for children as their parents prepare to be able to receive them back. The goal is to return those children back to their biological parents, legal guardians that they already have. Now, adoption, it happens when the option to reunite those children to their biological parents is no longer possible, and the rights of the biological parents have been terminated. That child is now eligible to be adopted and plugged into a new family. So it's a little bit of a different process. Those doors aren't even open to those fostering until reunification has been deemed not possible and the rights of the biological parents are terminated. So when you foster, it is always temporary with the hope of being able to reconnect and reunite the child with their biological families. All right. Question number 2. What is fostered to adopt? And that connects with just what we were talking about. Fostering to adopt is when a parent takes in a child with the hope of adoption if reunification with their biological family isn't possible. So, this occurs when there is a high chance that the legal rights of the biological parents is going to be terminated. So, the child is likely to be eligible for adoption, but they may not. During that whole process, again, the biological parents, if they desire, are working towards getting themselves situated to be able to provide a safe and healthy place for their child to return to. So, at any point, the child being fostered could end up returning back to their biological parents. So I kind of look at it as fostering in hopes to adopt because it's not a guarantee. The goal is always that if they're able to work things out to get the child back to their biological parents. But what it really says is that we're fostering and we're willing to adopt. So foster to adopt, it really focuses more on the fostering parents. They have a desire and they are, what would I say, open and prepared to adopt the child if necessary. Question number 3. Why are not all children available for adoption? Okay. Well, one of the reasons why all children aren't available for adoption is because what we were discussing before, their biological parents may still have those legal rights to them. So until it's deemed that reunification with their adopted, that reunification with their biological parents is not possible, then they can be open for adoption. So in the meantime, they're just temporary care, fostering, providing safe, healthy place for them to live until their parents are able to receive them again. If their parents are not able to receive them and take full custody and care of their responsibilities for that child, then they're eligible to adopt. When that has not been determined yet, they're just being fostered, getting temporary care and housing with the hopes of reuniting them with their biological families. On the other end, children may not be eligible for adoption because they're aging out, close to age out, or they have aged out by the age of 18. then they're no longer eligible for adoption. All right, let's keep going. All right, question number 4. Will they, as in the adopted children, will the adopted children still have contact with their biological parents, siblings, or other biological family members after their adoption? Okay, so will my adopted child still have contact with their biological family? So the answer to that is yes and no. It depends on the type of adoption that you have had. If it is a closed adoption, the answer is legally no. Open adoption is the opposite. Just as it says, it's open. There is open communication, or there can be open communication between the adoptive family and the biological family. So with that, let's go on a follow-up question with that. What is open adoption and closed adoption? And really, how does open adoption work? In open adoption, there's an arrangement between the adoptive family and the biological family that there's going to be communication occurring. And with that, there may be an exchange of their names. You may know who the biological parents are, who the adoptive parents are, their addresses, where they live, email address, phone numbers. You have contact information. Now, just because you have contact information and you know who is who does not mean that, let's say, the biological family is going to reach out, or the adopted child is going to reach out, or the adoptive family is going to reach out. But there's an open door, and that people can have access to that information. So sometimes people had that information, but their biological family may be elsewhere. Communication may not be possible. They're living in this state, they're living in that state. The information is there. So it means you have legal access to one another. And then the level of degree in communication and access that you give is determined between the biological family and the adopted family, or we could say the adopted parents and the biological parents. They set up their arrangements on their level of comfortability. So it can go from being able to do a phone call, to visiting, to emailing, calling, to whenever they want to see me. If they ask for me, let me know. Showing up for special occasions, to almost like them being involved in part of their life, depending. And that I have seen that when it is adoption with family. I've seen that where the relationship between the adopted family and the biological family is very, very close. Because they're family. So one of my friends did exactly that. He had his parents adopt his son. So since it's his parents, he's able to have a close relationship with his son. He is able to see him on holidays, pick him up on weekends, take him places, all of that. That it almost looks like a co-parenting type situation because they are family, because they're already connected. He's able to really just build a beautiful, beautiful life for himself. Now, a benefit for the open adoption, there's a couple benefits. So one, it allows the child to be able to be connected to their roots. They know who their parents are. They have those information. They know what their names are. They may know their occupation. They may know their story. Whatever information that the adoptive parents are willing to divulge, that child may have. They may be able to read their background and seen all the information and the documents that is on them that they're like, yeah, I know about them. So they have the knowledge, and the more you know, the less you fear, the less anxiety. So I always say the more information you can give, the less questions I have. The less questions I have, the less I'm wondering, well, what if this and what if that and what if that? And the less opportunity for fear and anxiety to overtake. So, no matter what our concern is or the level of openness we want to have, when it comes to at least the knowing and the knowledge, I think that is always good to divulge. Now, to what extent contact, being around each other, that's a case by case. But having knowledge and knowing so and this, here's the situation, here's what happened, can be very helpful, and it can bring a peace of mind to those questions. So another benefit for it I wanted to mention is that it also gives the adopted parents the answers to questions that their child may have. If you have it as an open adoption, they then can explain to them, oh, so this was your biological parents. This is where they were. This is what happened. These were the circumstances that led to you coming to live with us and be adopted by us. You can answer some of those questions they have if you keep it open. And lastly, it's helpful to the biological parents because they can have a peace of mind about where their child is, who they're with, and just their general well being, what happened to them. So, in closed adoption, the parents on both sides, adopted and biological, do not share any identifying information such as names and emails and addresses and things of that nature. They don't have contact with each other. In closed adoption, once the adoption has been legalized, these records become sealed, and this is to prevent any direct communication from occurring. Let's go to our sixth one, question number 6. All right, so what's a child's long-term case plan? So this really goes in regards with children and their adoption. So the case plan is created by the Child Welfare Agency, case managers, social workers. The plan explains the goals, the needs of the child, and their ultimate path, whether they're going to be reunited with their family or adopted. So it sets up, so when we think about that plan, that's exactly what it is. Let me give a description of the child. Let me explain the needs that they have, the goals that we have for them, and then our long-term plan. Are we going to reunite them with their biological family? Are we going to look into adoption? So this is a really important document to go over and to discuss when you are considering adopting. What is the plan for this child? So having an understanding of this plan and going and asking questions about it can help you to know what the long-term goals are for that child, whether the active work is for unification or it's for adoption, so that you and your family can figure out what you are going to do. Let's go to our 7th one. So, what are some of the health needs and behavior needs that I should expect from my child? And so, something we know is that children who go through foster systems and are adopted, but even if you don't go through foster care, for me, I didn't go through traditional foster care because I wasn't here in the United States and I wasn't in a place where that was offered. But the idea of being displaced and moving from place to place to place, I did experience that. And that comes with its own level of trauma that can occur. So a lot of what they need is the counseling services to be able to work through that. And along with that, then they need stability, a stable place with stable parents to support them, to love them, to ground them again. I talk about in my testimony about a tree being uprooted. And that's what I was feeling when I was little, constantly uprooted and in a new place. And so when you keep taking a plant out of its pot, it can't grow fruits. It doesn't grow very much. And so it's the same with people. The more uprooted they are constantly. And I went through uprooting my whole life. So, and I'm trying, and I try to break that pattern in my life because it's such a norm for me. Uprooting with family, even coming to here in the United States, there's lot of uprooting with schools. I went to a lot of different schools. And so it's constant uprooting and it stunts your growth. So providing stability, providing a loving home, providing counseling, therapy services for them to work through the trauma that they've experienced from going from place, from any unsafe environments, from any just not just physically, but emotionally rejection that they may experience on an emotional level too, physical, if they experience that, also providing that help and aid to them. So next one is, are there adoption assistance or services available for families after foster care? Absolutely, there is. That includes some monthly financial support, medical coverage. There's help for paying for therapy and other ongoing care that your child may need. So the type of care that your child may need, this is all written in their plan ahead of time while the child was in the foster care. And so services that need to continue will continue for them. So you don't have to worry about those things disappearing. All right, question number 9. What do I do if my adopted child has siblings? That's a good one. So what do we do if that occurs? Well, many children in the foster care system have siblings, and they may be with other foster families. The ideal would be is to be able to have a siblings adoption where a family is able to adopt both of them together. That provides them the support and connection and stability that they need to have through this process. And especially if they've experienced additional trauma through the constant uprooting from place to place that comes with foster care or just with loss of your biological parents, as was in my case. So if you're not able to adopt them, what you can do is to check in with your agency to find out about the whereabouts of their child's siblings and if maybe communication can be possible depending on the type of relationship they have. If they have an amicable relationship, what adoptive parents can do is try to connect them and have communication there, and that they can talk with their agency and their case managers about how that can occur. In my case, I had been adopted, but my sister was not adopted. So my family kept my eldest sister and she stayed with my uncle, and then they gave me up for adoption. So I was separated from my sister. My eldest sister, so my older sister, she and I were living at home. My eldest sister had married and was not living at home. So that's something I wondered, what would happen if we were both adopted? And I believe it would have made a really, really big difference for me. Um, I would have had someone to talk to, but someone to walk through this process with. If you can do it, I say do it. Adopt them together. I believe it makes a really big difference, and it gives a support that they need. Last but not least is question number 10. How can I continue to support my child's identity? Now, this is a conversation in of its own, but what I would say for that is, one, it is suggested, and even through my research, suggested that you allow your child to be able to talk about their story and their experience. You can ask them questions when they bring up something. Don't muffle it. Don't stifle them. Don't tell them to stop, or don't worry about that, or, oh, that was so long ago. Let's not talk about it. No, I'm talking about it because it's surfacing up and it matters. I'm talking about it because I'm dreaming about it. I'm talking about it because I'm having anxiety about it. I'm talking about it it because this is connected to my future and my destiny. And I need to get some understanding about where I am going. These conversations relate to identity and purpose and destiny. So we don't want to stifle those conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they may make us feel, because we may not have the answers to it. It may be sad, it may be traumatic, but all we all need is a listening ear. So when those questions come up, those conversations come up about your child, about their past, allow them to speak and to share their story. Along with that, allow them to write or journal. Get them a journal for them to write about it if they like to write things down. Allow them to draw pictures. When they're talking about their family, allow them to draw pictures of their family, their siblings, to label and keep them and collect them, and they can look up at it. And so, especially if you have a young child, I was adopted at 7. I was little enough that you can pull up pictures and say, oh, you want to talk about your sister? Let's look at these pictures of your sister. Another idea that I saw online was having a life book. This is really funny. I ended up making a cultural book that was kind of a life book for me by accident. This wasn't something my parents had me to do, but we had a project at school. We were supposed to make a book about our culture, about our family, and I ended up doing like research about Ghana and growing up in my culture and what my life was like. And on the back, I put like in dedication to my Ghanaian culture or Ghanaian family, but I dedicated it to my family or my culture. And it was like a little life book. And each page, I remember I had to have a picture. So when I talked about the dolls, I drew a picture of the dolls or I printed out a picture. Or if I talked about the game or we played Awari or whatever, I drew the Awari or I had a picture of it. And so I did something kind of like that. That was not the purpose, but I think it was therapy for me. But this is now something that you can do practically and intentionally, is to allow your child to make a life book telling their story. And there are resources online about that that I can link. And obviously other practical ways that are not just in regards to healing, because those things, the conversations, the drawings, the life books, really deal with healing in regards to identity. If they have a specific cultural background, you could connect them to it. As for me, I'm originally from Ghana. We didn't do too much with it, as there wasn't a lot of resources for us in the suburbs of New Jersey. And I'm from the more rural towns of Ghana. And even when I say my town to other Ghanaians, they're like, where? They're like, where? I'm like, it's about 20 minutes bus ride from Kumasi in the farmlands. Like, oh, Kumasi, I got you. So something that we did once in a while, when I was little, we went like to the African Children's Choir. I saw a couple shows there. And then when I did ESL, we participated in the international nights. And that was probably like the extent of things that we did culturally. But my parents tried to take me to a few things that would come up. So if it's a more predominant culture, may have some accesses and resources that you can take them to celebrations, or if there's community centers that you're able to connect them to their culture and identity, because that's really important. Because what happens is when they get old, there is a loss of that. And so if you're not grounded in who you are outside of it, it can be really destructive to your self-esteem. And when I got into college, I experienced a little bit of that shaming of being adopted and not being as grounded in my first culture. And there was a particular student who shamed me on that and on my background. And so I didn't allow that to define me, and I could bounce from it easily. And what it ended up doing was, okay, let me learn more about my culture and my background. And, God sets things up that even in that season, in that year, college year was the year that I had that urge and that, like, I need to go back home. So everything was aligning. So they can experience shaming from others or they can feel ashamed of themselves. There can be a feeling of loss of identity. They talk about that imposter syndrome, but I would just say a loss of belonging. Not just I feel like I don't belong here. They can feel like they don't belong anywhere. So being able to ground them in who they are and in their identity, even at a young age, with whatever resources you have, connecting them, to male figures, to female figures, to people who look like them, and always be involved. You don't just drop off a child and leave, but just opening those doors for them to see and to see themselves in different situations and places and spaces can give them that sense of identity, but they can see their future. And if you can see your future, you're likely to get there and to get there and be successful in it. You can dream of it and you dream and you envision and you build towards it. So identity is really important because it tells you who you are, and who you believe you are is going to determine where you think you can go, what you think you can do, and who you think you can become. I'm going to leave it at that. So I hope this was helpful in having these conversations. Please comment below. Tell me your thoughts and opinions. Add to it other strategies you have. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to ask my questions at the beginning, but what strategies do you use? What resources do you use to help to affirm the identity of your adopted child and to help ground them in who they are? Because sometimes they may not know, especially you get a newborn baby, they may not know. So what do you do to help them to discover who they are, their giftings, their talents, their backgrounds? What resources do you provide, or strategies that you do, or activities you do to help cultivate who they are or to help affirm who they are? Please add in the comments and let's get deeper into the conversation. All right. Remember, God loves you and He has created you. How does it go? Remember, God loves you and He has created you to fulfill His good purpose. Until next time, be blessed.